Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for y'all. So today we're going to be taking another look at the Runick archetype. This time, however, instead of going back to Invoked Runick, which was actually my initial plan, I was just going to make another Invoked Runick video. I was actually doing a little bit more research on the archetype and some variants of it, and I decided to give the Synchro variant a try after I realized I had pretty much everything already in my collection that I needed to play this particular variant. So yeah, I'm currently still trying out more Runick decks. I really like the archetype, but like, I want to do something that's at least a little more exciting than just playing the Floodgates and passing. Like, don't get me wrong, I actually do really like playing this mill deck. I think it's I said this in the last Runick video, the deck profile I did, but I do really, I think Runick is a cool archetype. I do think that the stall Floodgate strategy can get a little annoying, and I definitely get why people don't like playing against it, but that said, I think that Runick's ability to disrupt and then mill, or even banish cards incidentally, is a pretty cool way to go about that sort of playstyle. So, what's different about this variant? Well, we've taken out all of the invoked cards, and as you can see, we've replaced them with a Synchro engine. As for our tuners, we're particularly using the Fabled Cerburrel, 3 copies of that, and then 1 copy of the Fabled Abanc. And the main reason that we're using Fabled Cerburrel, or 2 main reasons actually. One is that we need a level 2 tuner, Abanc also being a level 2 tuner. And on top of that, Cerburrel can special summon itself when discarded off of Hugin's effects. So that's kind of the main idea, right? Is if you've got the Cerburrel and then a couple of Runick quick play spells in hand, then you can actually end on a level 10 Synchro in addition to your regular Runick plays. And it's pretty cool to end on one of these because the Baronne Omni Negate obviously is very, very good to protect your Runick Fountain and your future plays. And then the Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign, the Chengying here, this can actually be used in conjunction with pretty much any Runick card because all the Runick cards banish. Basically, this can add an effect where, in addition to banishing cards off the top of your opponent's deck, we're also going to be banishing cards on their field and graveyard to disrupt them as well. So it's even further disruption for this already disruption-heavy archetype. The way that you climb up to level 10 with this deck, it's relatively simple. Basically, the combo is you start by using, again, one of your quick play Runick spells in order to summon the Hugin. Then with Hugin's effect, you can discard the Cerburrel. That'll get you a level 4 Synchro monster. That could be actually one of 2 things. That can either be the Cupid Pitch or the Herald of the Arclight, but more often than not, it's just going to be the Cupid Pitch here. So Cupid Pitch can bump itself up to level 6. From there, we can throw out any other Runick quick play spell card. And then that will get us a Geri, the Runick Fangs. This line of play still gets you your Fountain, by the way, and at least 2 draws if you're playing those 2 Runick Quick Play spells. So yeah, that's the idea. Then you use a second Runick Quick Play spell on the Geri, the Runick Fangs, and then you sync Cupid Pitch and Geri for your level 10 Synchro. Typically on turn 1, I'm just going to go into the Baron for the Omni Negate, but there are times, again, we're going for the Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign is nice. It's actually nice for a couple of reasons as a Sovereign. Not only can you banish a bunch of cards with its effect on the field and graveyard as you're banishing cards from your opponent's deck, but because you're obviously going to be banishing a lot of cards, this monster is going to get huge. It's going to have a lot of defense points and attack points, but mainly defense points. Usually you want to summon this thing in defense mode, and then it's just got, like, over 4,000 defense on average, and your opponent's going to have a really hard time getting over it. And even if they do summon, like, maybe like an access code talker or something, you still got the protection effect. Although, I guess to be fair, access code could likely battle over it after trying to destroy it, but you know what I mean. It's still got the protection effect, in addition to banishing, in addition to being a huge body, once you start banishing your opponent's stuff as well. We do actually have another level 2 tuner option in this deck that's going to be Allvain, the Essence of Vanity. I was trying to find, like, I was looking for, like, maybe one more good level 2 tuner to throw in addition to these Fabled ones. By the way, the Fabled Abanc here is mainly here because it's got 600 defense for a Cupid Pitch, but it's also got this minor effect where, like, once in a blue moon, occasionally it'll matter where you can pitch a Cerburrel, bring this back for some plays, but that very rarely ends up mattering. The Allvain, however, can be got off of Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion has a couple of applications in this deck. It can at least summon the Allvain, but it can also get out any of the Runick cards as well. So that can actually come up occasionally if you've got, like, Instant Fusion plus 1, Runick spell. Then you can maybe go for Hugin with the Fusion and then use the Runick spell after you've gotten the Fountain to kind of maybe desperately draw 1 card. I don't know. It's a very, like, niche scenario. It's mostly here as another option to go into Allvain, but I also like that the Instant Fusion has that variety of it that you can do a couple of different things with it there. Also, to be fair, if your Hugin gets negated, you could just try to instant fusion and go for another one too. It's not needed by any means, but we're of course still rocking the Cyber Stein and then the two pretty devastating fusion monsters we like to summon off of that. Oh, one sort of Floodgate-ish card that we are playing. Well, not ish. It is a Floodgate. We're playing Kaiser Coliseum as our like unique Floodgate for this variant. The idea is that we can sit on one of our level 10 synchros plus the Kaiser Coliseum, and then our opponent's only going to be able to play one monster at a time. And yeah, it's like good luck getting rid of Baronne and or especially the Supreme Sovereign with only one monster and not being able to put any more down on the board besides that. So yeah, we do have again one kind of like Floodgate-ish card in the deck. I know I said it's like a little boring to use Floodgates, but this one's at least different, right? Yeah, that's what I'm telling myself. I guess one of the unique Synchro slash extra deck monster that we are playing is Fabled Andwraith. There's only really been a couple of times where I've summoned this, and it's not been super great, but I was like, you know, we have the ability to summon this monster, and there are some times where you're playing this deck and you really just need like a couple more draws to try to get like another way to get to Fountain and get accelerating. So like, there are scenarios where this card could potentially come up. Honestly though, I'm probably about to replace it for Stardust Charge Warrior, because like, there's really been like one, maybe two times where I've tried to summon this in order to draw into more stuff, and even then your opponent just discards and you don't get any further, like, you know, draws. So it's like, it's not really that great of a card, but I just wanted to try it out, and it's like, you know, we're playing the Fabled tuners, we might as well, but ultimately I think the Stardust Charge Warrior is probably the better call in the long term. So, let's see. Now I think that's about everything I wanted to cover with the build here, so as always as ever, yeah, no, that's what I said. Anyway, let's just go ahead and break it down card by card, and then we'll take a look at some gameplay. Oh, also, before I break the build down, real quick, just want to plug the Patreon, which went live a few weeks ago. Feel free to check it out in the description below. It's going to be that top link there. If you like the daily Master Duel content that comes out here on the YouTube channel, there's even more daily Master Duel content that comes out over there on the Patreon. It's just $5 a month, so it's the price of one booster pack, but for the entire month, it's like, you know, 30 days worth of content there. It's definitely a lot more value than a pack of filler you'd get with $5 there. So check it out. We got previews, we got exclusive games, we got Q&As, we got a whole bunch of other stuff too, and more perks on the way. But without further ado, let's just break it down card by card here, and then we'll look at some games. So we're playing 1 Cyber Stein, 3 the Fabled Cerburrel, 1 the Fabled Abanc, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Harpie's Feathered Esther, 1 Terraforming, 1 Instant Fusion, 3 Runick Fountain, 3 Kaiser Coliseum, 1 Runick Allure, 2 Called by the Grave, 3 Runick Tip, 3 Runick Flashing Fire, 3 Runick Destruction, 3 Runick Freezing Curses, 3 Runick Slumber, 2 Runick Smithing Storm, 1 Runick Golden Droplet, and then 2 Runick Dispelling. That's going to round out the main deck there. The extra deck is going to be 1 Allvain, the Essence of Vanity, 2 Hugin, the Runick Wings, 1 Munin, the Runick Wings, 3 Geri, the Runick Fangs, 1 The Last Warrior from Another Planet, 1 Naturia Extrio, 1 Herald of the Arclight, 1 Cupid Pitch, 1 Coral Dragon, 1 Fabled Andwraith, 1 Baronne de Fleur, and then finally 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Chengying. So there is the list, and now let's look at some gameplay. Alright, so our first duel here is going to be against a branded Predaplant deck, which, it's definitely been picking up steam, obviously, since the new support came out. I've only played against it a couple of times. It's a decent deck in its own right. Those Pendulum cards, I will say, are a lot better than I thought they would be. But anyway, our opponent's going to take the first turn here. Fortunately, it looks like they got a fairly bricky hand. They only end up setting 1 card before passing. Our hand's alright. It could be better, but we did open Runick Fountain, so can't ever really complain about that. I'm going to start by firing off the Dispelling here. Opponent's going to max C. I definitely want to call by this while I have the opportunity to, because it's pretty obvious that my opponent's hand to start off with is not that great, so definitely want to make sure that it stays bad, and that they're not getting any free draws or free extenders off of draws. So since I already have the Fountain, I'm just going to go ahead and get the Allure here with Munin. I'll activate that, and then the Fountain, and then activate Runick Slumber. It's only for 2, which obviously ideally it would be for 3, but you know what, we'll definitely take it for 2 as well. So the first mills are definitely very important to pay attention to. Obviously it'll let you know what deck you're playing against. The Predaplant Triantis definitely indicates obviously that we're playing against a Predaplant deck. So I'll put these Dispelling and Slumber back for 2 draws. The opponent's got a Galaxy Cyclone, but fortunately because we got Munin rather than Hugin, we can actually do something about this. Hugin can only stop a destruction effect, however, the Munin will negate any card that targets one of your, I believe it's either a Runick card or a set card. As soon as the game lets me click and check here. Yeah, it's a Runick card or a set card, so it's not that great for protecting the floodgates, but it's definitely good for protecting the fountain. I'm going to throw down this Coliseum here, even though I don't have any monsters on board, because as we can see here, as soon as my opponent summons a monster, I'm just going to fire off the Runick Destruction to summon one of my Runick monsters from the extra deck. Now, Kaiser Coliseum, I know that during the actual deck profile itself, I mainly talked about using it in conjunction with a level 10 Synchro monster, and it is one of the more, I guess, common or, like, yeah, just common or, like, on theme, I guess you could say, uses for it. But honestly, more often than not, you find yourself also using it for, or rather with just a single Runick monster, because especially once your opponent commits to a summon, that's like one of the major ways in which Kaiser Coliseum can be very good, is in that exact scenario. If you've got no monsters on board, your opponent summons their starter, then you can chain your Runick spell, and then special a Runick monster from your extra deck. Now, your opponent only has their starter monster on board, and they're not actually able to put, or even attempt to put, any monsters on board due to Kaiser Coliseum. So, even though it might look like a quote-unquote slower floodgate because it is a spell card rather than a trap card like Skill Drain, Rivalry, there can only be one, Goes End, etc., it's actually still got some applications at the quick speed thanks to the Runick Quick Play spell cards there. So, neat little way in which you're able to kind of like bait the opponent into starting a play and then cut them off from it immediately. So, they conceded shortly after that, giving us the win. We like to see that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next duel. And this one here is going to be against a Valance deck, which is another one where it's like, I haven't had too much experience playing against them. It's funny, they're one of those archetypes where I feel like I'm going to get wrecked because I don't know what any of the cards do. I know it's something about like moving your opponent's stuff to their back row, but whatever. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm not too worried about it, so... got another hand where we open Fountain here. It's going to be pretty lucky for us. So I'm going to go ahead and just summon the Munin here. But I'm actually not going to discard any of the cards in order to get Runick Allure, because Runick Allure is definitely not going to be as valuable as the other stuff in my hand. This is definitely going to be a hand where I want to set up the level 10 Synchro. It's going to be a Baronne in this case, plus the Kaiser Coliseum, plus the Runick setup, of course, the Fountain and the draws and all that. So what I actually did here was kind of an alternate way of going into it. I know I had talked about going into, or rather using Hugin to discard Cerebral, and that's how you make a level 10, but there are actually multiple ways you can do it, mostly thanks to Coral Dragon. You can actually also use a level 2 tuner with a Geri, and that'll let you go into Coral Dragon, and then another Runick spell with another Geri, that lets you go to level 10. You can also, if you've got Ash Blossom, as you saw me do here, you can just Ash Blossom and again go for the Munin here, and then after that, we can go for the Coral Dragon. And then, like I said before, once you get the Coral Dragon, you're just dispelling for the Geri there, and then you can get the Baronne de Fleur. So, we're also going to get a couple of draws off the Fountain there, which is very nice. And then, now we have that, the Baronne, the Kaiser Coliseum, and Ash Blossom, the Runick Slumber for another draw. We get another draw off the Coral Dragon. It's going to be Fabled Cerburrel, so it's not really going to be anything super relevant, but this is definitely an ideal opening turn one for this particular variant of this deck. We've got, again, actually the Runick Slumber is even more ideal because it's protection for the Baronne, right? It's going to keep it from being destroyed by battle or by card effects. So we can not only, we don't only have the Omni Negate, but we can protect it as well. That'll also give us a cycle, a draw with the Fountain. It'll only be one draw because the Runick Slumber is going to be our only Runick card, but that's still totally fine. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, we have the Kaiser Coliseum, so our opponent's only going to have one monster at a time, and more importantly, once they have one monster on the board, they can't even attempt to use any kind of an effect that would put another one in play. And then, as I mentioned, we have the Ash Blossom, so definitely an ideal setup for this deck. This is pretty much a perfect turn one, except ideally maybe the Fabled Cerburrel would have been a little bit better. So even this specific hate deck against us in the form of Cosmic Cyclone, like our opponent went to Cosmic the Kaiser Coliseum, and I was just like, okay, negate question mark? And then opponent just conceded, folded immediately. So, yeah, that is, I guess, one kind of, I guess, quote-unquote benefit of playing this deck, if you want to call it that, is that people tend to concede to it pretty quickly. A lot of people don't even really try to play out of it. Like, it doesn't even really... Because I think people are fatigued from playing against the Floodgate variant, and, like, honestly, it doesn't really matter what variant of Runick you're playing against. People see Runick cards, a lot of people, not everyone, but enough people, as soon as you start playing Runick cards, they'll immediately, like, kind of roll their eyes. And in a lot of ways, you've already won a lot of the psychological matchup at that point, but... Anyway, we've got more games to look at. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one. Alright, this one here is going to be against Live Twin. This one I think, I'm trying to remember, because I played against Live Twin a couple of times with this deck. So I'm trying to remember which Live Twin game this is. You know, I'd really like to show a game with this deck where I actually get the full deck out, but it's really hard, because as I mentioned towards the end of that last game, people really will just kind of fold relatively quickly once they start seeing you play Runick cards. So it's a little annoying when you're trying to get matches for YouTube. I mean, it's not really annoying when you're playing on ladder, then it's like you're getting free wins, but trying to get matches for YouTube that are actually like decent, I'm like, oh. So here actually, this match I did actually for once use the Golden Droplet first effect. I know I talked before, like, you should never ever use this card's first effect, and like generally speaking, I do think that's the case. Like, even in a mill deck, giving your opponent a draw is like never really good. Especially, it's not like you're giving them a draw just to mill them for it. But I guess in this case, I'm willing to do it because I am giving them a draw, but it's going to give me 3 draws off the Runick Fountain. It's very risky. This play is super risky. If my opponent's got an Ash Blossom, I'm kind of just fucked. Well, I'm not just done. Like, I do have the Runick Dispelling, but... and the Kaiser Coliseum, like, I'd have options, but they wouldn't be good ones. So I really gotta hope this Runick Fountain resolves, and thankfully it does. The Ash Blossom, it's funny. Playing Ash Blossom against Runicks, there's actually a bit of finesse to it. It's now, sometimes. Most of the time, yeah, you can just Ash the Hugin, and that's whatever. But if your opponent, like, if you suspect your opponent has a Fountain, or if you know, because maybe they searched it with a tip or something, basically, if you know your opponent's going to get a Fountain out, or if they just, like, open Fountain, but you've got the Ash Blossom in hand, using it on that draw can be very, very impactful, because obviously, you know, doing it that first time, negating that first set of 3 draws, that's going to stop the advantage train. That's going to stop the draws from coming in throughout the course of the game there. So, opponent's got a Harpie's Feather Duster, but fortunately we have, you know, Hugin on board, so we're just able to protect our cards very easily there. Now, our opponent activates the secret password here. I've got the Ash Blossoms, but I've also got the Dispelling and the Destruction. So I'm actually kind of in a scenario where I'm really kind of spoiled for choice here, honestly. I get to kind of negate this, or stop the Live Twin plays however I so choose. So what I think I'm going to do here is I'll let the secret password resolve. It's never right to Ash the secret password. Don't ever do that. The Ash Blossom, I would wait until they actually go to use the Live Twin monster. And that's kind of my plan here. Because I can use the Destruction from my hand on the Sunny Snitch before it resolves, I'm going to try that first. And then at some point during my turn, I can also throw out this Dispelling here. And then I'll get a couple of draws. And then even if my opponent has a Live Twin after that, I've still got the Ash Blossoms too. So, yep, as I said, the Sunny Snitch is going to get Destruction here. Because it's a continuous spell card and I'm chaining the Destruction to the activation of it, it actually doesn't get to resolve and search for the monster there. So what I actually end up doing here is summoning the Munin rather than getting a card from my opponent's hand with the Runick Dispelling here. And since I've got 2 Ash Blossom, I'll go ahead and get the Allure. I'm fine with that. Yeah, now that the search wasn't successful, I don't really feel the need to kind of hit a random card from my opponent's hand. But the other thing that this did, rather than using the Dispelling to hit a random card and hope that I hit the Live Twin, that'll happen kind of quickly. I wanted to talk about this, is by using it for the Munin, I was once again able to do that kind of setup I was talking about earlier, where I've got the Kaiser Coliseum in play, but my opponent doesn't have any monsters. I think in this case, I actually summoned the Munin, and then they summoned the Live Twin, and then they conceded. But long story short, I'm still able to get a monster on my opponent's turn for the Kaiser Coliseum, even if I don't have any going into the turn. Well, technically, I did have one going into the turn of the Hugin, which I had to send for the Harpie's Feather Duster. But, yeah, as I mentioned before, just being able to summon monsters on your opponent's turn very easily with just about any of their cards is one way that the Runick deck can very easily take advantage of Kaiser Coliseum as a floodgate in ways that maybe other decks can't always. So, yeah, we've got another game here. Let's go ahead and jump straight into it. And this one here is actually going to be against a 60-card zombie deck, so it's definitely more of an uphill battle when you've got 60 cards to mill. Or at least it would be if people didn't just, again, concede so easy. That's the thing, too. I'm pretty sure this is another very early concede from my opponent, which I feel like if you're playing a 60-card deck, like, isn't that the one matchup where, like, you'd really want to stay and actually play it out? Because, like, one, not only do you have an obvious advantage in playing 60 cards, but two, like, because you're playing 60 cards, I'm much less likely to hit your deck's, like, you know, core strategy right off the bat. Although, from what I remember, I actually got some pretty lucky mills here. Because I know I milled this zombie world. I'm pretty sure I milled their baller dock. I don't know if they're only playing one. Yeah, there it is. I don't know if they're only playing one, but most builds only play one of this card. And then we also hit their Destrudo as well. So, I know I just said, like, you're playing 60 cards. I'm not even that likely to hit key stuff. I did actually get pretty lucky and hit key stuff anyway. There goes a unit zombie too, although they've assuredly got a set of that, so. This is going to be another game where I'm going to use Ash plus Munin to actually go into my level 10 Synchro here. Looking here, yeah, it's actually going to be the exact same setup we had last time. Although, not exactly the same, I'm actually able to get a second Fountain online for another draw here. The cool thing too is that the Geri is going to add the first Runick Fountain back to my hand as well, so, yeah, even if I wasn't adding the second Runick Fountain back, I think it's still right to play a Fountain over Fountain, even if you're only getting one additional draw. That's still another draw in this deck once as many draws as it can get. It just happened to work out here that I was able to add that first Fountain back anyway. Which actually, if this Coil Dragon draws me a Runick Quickplay spell I can play, I could have played this Fountain on top of it, this one, and drawn yet another card. That wasn't the case, but I'll take a call by as well, so. It is a little rough not having any Runick spells going into my opponent's turn here, but, you know, we've got the Baronne, we've got the Kaiser Coliseum, we've got the Ash, and the call by. So against a zombie deck, I'm definitely feeling like that's going to be enough to stop my opponent here. And now here's the funny thing, right? This time there was not any trickery or deception with the Kaiser Coliseum here. My opponent activates a Zombie Reborn, which I've seen this card played against me before, and I'm like, oh, sorry, that's like a truck outside. I thought there was something in my room. I was like, wait, what's going on? Anyway, no, I've had the Zombie Reborn played against me before, and I was very much like, oh, God, this is going to be really annoying. But then I realized, like, wait, my opponent doesn't have Zombie World on the field. What are they going to get back? And they gave back the Ash Blossom, and I'm like, really? The Ash Blossom? So you want Ash Blossom for your one monster, huh? Well, long story short, I guess my opponent just kind of ended up playing themselves and shortly conceded following that because I'm sure they realized that, oh, I brought back an Ash Blossom, now that's the only monster I get to have on the board. So, you know, in the past couple of games, you know, we've kind of been playing our opponent with the Kaiser Coliseum on their turn, but this was definitely a case where our opponent played themselves. Anyway, so we do have one more game to watch. Let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. And finally, last but not least, we have a Runick Mirror. This is actually a matchup where we're going to mill our opponent out for the most part. They're going to concede before they actually lose. But we do mill it out, and it's the mirror match of all decks, although our opponent's going to give us a lot of help in that regard. You'll see what I mean here in a moment. They're going to take the first turn and start by summoning an Alistair, adding the Invocation. So you might have think like, well, you've got the Ash Blossom, you didn't even try to negate the Alistair. Well, one, they've always got the Invocation in. No, that's actually a joke. If I really wanted to negate, if I was really concerned about the Alistair, you know, I would have ashed it. But that's the thing, I'm not concerned about the Alistair, or rather, I should say, the Alistair is not my primary concern with this Ash Blossom for this turn. Because I see Alistair and I know how popular Runick is, I see Alistair, I'm going to assume it's Runick in this meta. And I don't think that's what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think it's an entirely, too much of a hedge. Hedge is what I'm looking for. I don't think it's a hedge to make that bet, honestly. Invoked typically doesn't get used much in this meta outside of Runick. It didn't get used a whole lot in the meta before Runick. Branded has kind of replaced Invoked in a lot of decks as the kind of de facto fusion engine, but anyway, I see Runick, I'm sure it's going to be branded, so, or not branded, I'm sure it's going to be Runick, so I'm going to let it resolve, because I want to use my Ash Blossom on either the Hugin or the Fountain. The opponent then activates Monster Gate, and I really did think about Ash Blossoming this as well, Mainly because I don't want them to hit into Cyber Stein here, but I'm going to let it resolve anyway because, again, I really would still rather Ash Blossom the Hugin / Fountain here, and the odds are not super in my opponent's favor to actually hit the Cyber Stein off the Monster Gate. It's one reason why I don't, actually it's the reason why I don't like Reasoning and Monster Gate in the invoked variant of Runick's, is because you're playing 3 Alistairs, so you're way more likely to hit one of those than you are your actual Cyber Stein. I'm willing to take the chance here and assume that my opponent is not going to hit the Cyber Stein. And after quite a lengthy series of mills, this is what I mean when I say my opponent is going to help me out quite a bit here as far as decking them out. After quite a few mills here, there is not going to be a Cyber Stein at the end of it, from what I recall. It's just going to be another Alistair. So, yeah, no, again, I really just don't like Reasoning or Monster Gate in the invoked variant for this exact reason. Reasoning and Monster Gate are kind of interesting. I'd only want them if I was playing only Cyber Stein as my only monster, or like, I don't know, Cyber Stein and another monster I actually want to special summon, but it's usually only going to be Cyber Stein. And honestly, like, I don't know, milling a bunch of your Runick spells, like, can be good, but especially in, like, we're still in a fairly Runick-heavy meta. Not, like, Runick-heavy, like, it's, like, you know, the most popular matchup. It's not even that, but there's enough other Runick decks out there that I'd be wary of milling a bunch of cards, just, like, as a general strategy, in a 40-card deck, that is, so. Indeed, my opponent's actually gotten themselves down to 12 cards here, so if I recall correctly, they actually had to get themselves down to 7, which is perfect given what I have in hand. I can use the Flashing Fire to destroy their Durgis, and then they banish 2, and then I can use the Golden Droplet. They'll draw 1, banish 4, and then they'll have 0. I can just pass and they lose. That said, though, I do still want to be mindful as my opponent gets low on cards in deck of the activation requirements of the Runick cards. Because if your opponent has fewer cards in deck than you can mill with a Runick card's effect, you're actually not able to activate that effect of that Runick card. So, one thing you can do, though, and one thing I'm actually going to do here in a bit is, once your opponent is low on deck, you can just kind of like fire off all of your Runick spells in one chain. They'll all resolve because you've met the activation requirement of them having enough cards in deck to mill. And then from there, you can just, you know, use them all, you'll banish a bunch of cards, and then they'll have no cards left in deck. And that way, you don't have to get it exact. Otherwise, you would have to get it, like, so that you're banishing the exact amount of cards that they have left in deck. Yeah, I don't really know why my opponent's bothering with, like, these invocations for Augur. I thought they were going to get a Makaba here, which actually really would have screwed me up. Well, I don't know about really. I probably would have been able to find a win anyway, but it could have very easily screwed me up here. But they go for the Caliga and the Augurides instead. I'm not really sure I understand that. You should definitely see off of the 5 cards that you've banished from me that this is the mirror match, and I don't, legitimately, these do nothing. These do absolutely nothing to me. I'll negate the Caliga anyway, just to banish a bunch of cards. Like I said, between the Freezing Curse and the Golden Droplet, we have enough to banish the rest of their deck. They're going to activate a Tip. I guess they're going to try to search for a card before I banish all their stuff, but I'm just going to fire off the rest of the spells from my hand to hopefully just banish whatever it is they're trying to search for, and then by the end of this chain link, they're not going to have any cards left in their deck, and then I can just hit in phase, and then they lose. And so the opponent's going to concede before that happens. They didn't let the chain link run out, but it's fine. Like I said, it's just going to be a win anyway. So there are the games there. Now let's go ahead and move now to the outro. Alright, I want to thank everybody for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That does mean a lot to me, not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel. So thank you very, very much. Other ways of supporting the channel, if you're interested in, are by commenting and subscribing here on YouTube. Comments definitely let me know what you think of the build, what you think of this particular variant of Runick. I do think this is one of the more fun variants. I guess to be fair, I've only played this in the Invoked variant. That's not true, actually. I did play, like, a quote-unquote pure variant for a few games, and, like, I don't know. Me, personally, I'm just, like, I want to do something, like I said, at least a little bit more interesting than just floating up a floodgate. I know, I'm just dropping a different kind of floodgate, but, hey, at the very least, it is a different kind of floodgate, so to speak, so, and again, I think Kaiser Coliseum, in a lot of ways, can be, like, the most effective floodgate, as we saw a lot of scenarios where we were kind of able to trick our opponent into, or I guess in some cases our opponent trick themselves into playing one monster and then locking them into that one monster, not being able to even try to put another one on the board there. So there is that. Yeah, let me know what you think of this variant. Like I said, I like it quite a bit. Subscribing, that'll let you know when the videos drop here on YouTube, which does happen every day, so you do have daily Master Duel content to look forward to when you subscribe. And then other ways to support the channel. Like I said earlier in the video, I've got a Patreon linked in the description below. Feel free to check that out if you want to contribute there and get some more daily Master Duel content as a result. Your contributions are very much appreciated and do go a long way towards helping the channel grow. But that is about all the time that I've got for today. So without further ado, this is XLex signing out. Hope you have a fantastic day.